Have you ever felt compelled to do something or go somewhere without really having a reason why? I remember not long ago talking with someone who worked in Marshalltown, and they said that each day they would go home a certain way from their job that was downtown. And this one day, it happened to be in July in 2018, for no real reason, they just felt, I'm going to go a different way home. I feel like this is the way to go. And they always went the other way. It happened to be the day of the tornado, and had they gone the way that they typically go home, they would have gone right into the path of that storm. Something they felt very grateful for later, realizing that the Holy Spirit probably inspired them in some way to take this alternate route without them knowing why, what reason there was. I think this can happen to us in big ways and small ways, and even in our daily lives, that the Holy Spirit inspires us. It compels us to do things maybe a little differently than we're used to. Doesn't mean that we don't have freedom, but what it does mean is that God can kind of use little inspirations here and there to help us go in the right direction, perhaps, or to help us to think about things in a different way. I think that this guidance of the Holy Spirit is part of the reason why the early church was so effective at evangelization and why it grew so vastly and so quickly. It's because it was Spirit-led. Today we hear about how the Holy Spirit speaks to the community at Antioch, and it says, set aside for me Paul and Barnabas, who I have work for them to do. So to set them out on their first evangelical journey, to go out and preach the good news to other parts of the world. And they follow the Spirit's lead. So they lay hands on Paul and Barnabas and they send them out on their journey. That's the kind of obedience to the Holy Spirit that leads to growth. That's the kind of obedience to the Holy Spirit that leads to greater faith for us, that leads to good things in our lives. It's the kind of obedience that we need to continue to foster in our own lives. We have such a spirit of individuality and of my own personal freedom in this world. While we do have freedom, but true freedom is the freedom to follow God's will in our lives, to follow His statutes and commands that aren't to restrict us, but rather for our happiness in the end. And I hate to think about all the times that we can grieve the Holy Spirit by refusing to listen to His voice, by refusing to take the guidance of God in our lives, sometimes knowingly and sometimes unknowingly. So let's ask the Lord today that we might have ears to hear, that we might be open to the guidance of the Holy Spirit, that in whatever way that we are spoken to today, that we might hear His voice and we might follow unreservedly, so as to gladden the Holy Spirit, so as to continue to foster that sense of presence of God in our own lives, so that we might spread that presence and allow others to know His love each and every day.